Hi, my name is Jesse, and I am a speaker development coach, and I'm so excited to have a conversation with Pearl today.
Hey everybody, this is Pearl Sharonza, and I am the owner of Women's Successful Living and also the host of Conversations with Pearl. And I'm so excited to bring our guest today. And yes, we actually have a male today visiting us. And I'm so excited because Jessie is an amazing speaker development coach, award-winning and international speaker. He's a best-selling author, host, and enjoys traveling the world with his family. And he actually takes his business on the road. And if you follow him on Facebook, which we're going to share all his contacts with you, you're going to be able to follow along all the fun things that he does and how he's empowering other speakers around the world to use their voice, but not just to stay where they're at and spread it around internationally and nationally here in the US. So Jessie, welcome to the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yay. So tell us a little bit. I always like to kind of start back, like where did everything begin for you? What brought you to what you're doing today? So share a little bit about your story with the listeners.
Yeah, it started with writing my first book in 2019. I was using that as a way to cope through a difficult season of my life, and that helped me through the healing process. And as I was writing this book, I realized that it was changing my life. And I realized if it could change my life, it could change the life of other people, which then evolved into people wanting me to speak about the book. And then also developing into people wanting me to coach them on how to share their story effectively from stage to increase their impact and their income and growing their business.
So 2019, you start this just before we go through the shutdown of COVID, and you share your story, you write this book, and you're starting to speak. How did COVID affect that journey that you were on?
It's one of the best things that ever happened to me. I don't think I ever would have took the leap without that experience of 2020. That's when I invested into my first coach. That's when I started to take things more seriously. And during the whole time, it was a gift for me personally, which sounds very maybe insensitive because of all the things that were going on in the world. But for me personally, it really allowed me to become more creative.
And so, yeah, because it was crazy that time for all of us. That's when everybody was learning Zoom. Some of us were already on Zoom. We're like, oh, we've been doing this for a little while, but it opened up a whole new world of like the reach too, like where you could reach and share your story. We no longer were just, trying to find stages, now you're finding more the Zoom stages, but there was a bigger reach. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it helped pivot everybody in the direction of more virtual experiences, and it helped people connect in a time where we felt disconnected.
So would you like to share what the book was at the time?
Yeah, the first book that came out was titled Live Your Dash, Discovering the 8 F's to Freedom.
And tell us a little bit about that book.
Yeah, I realized that, the dash representing what you see in a tombstone between the time you're born and the time you pass away, and experiencing significant loss in my life, I realized how precious time was. And in the short amount of time that we have, I learned that there was 8 specific areas of my life that if I was intentional on, I could heal and I could grow and I could make a difference. And writing about those different subject matters every single day is what got me through that difficult season. And that's what led into the book.
Okay, so everybody's gonna be peaked here. So what are those 8 areas? You want to touch on them just a little bit for us?
Sure. Yeah. I'll name some of them off. So it's finances, fitness, fun, focus, family, friendship, faith, and forgiveness.
Boy, and those can be some heavy ones too, for especially like you talk about forgiveness, right? I mean, if we start thinking about some of those areas and you talk about the dash, I'm part of a company called Market America, and our founder, J.R. Ridinger, he was an amazing person, and he just commanded a stage, and he always talked about living your dash, right? What are you doing with that dash? And for those that are new to hearing that, living that dash is like, what are you doing from when you're born, that date you're born, to the unknown date that you're going to leave? And we don't know that date. We it's already predetermined, but we don't personally know that date is. And so, unfortunately, we lost JR a little over a year ago after one of the last conventions. And and his legacy that he's left behind for all of us is exactly that. What are we doing with the dash? And as you know, Jessie, we lost our son over a little over 18 months ago in a tragic car accident. And we spoke to him 20 minutes before he passed. We had those I love yous. He'd made a wrong decision and made a choice to drink and drive. Told us he was in an Uber and he was actually in our vehicle. And the things that transpired after that, when you talk about those F's like in that dash, the forgiveness and the family and all of that, those really showed up for us. And I always had a belief in living my dash, as we're saying, but at the same time, since Matt's passing, even more so now. Our younger son's he's engaged, getting married in October, and starting to step into enjoying that. The shock of losing a child, that first year, it's like the whole shock and walking through it. And then the acceptance, you never really accept it, but there's that sort of acceptance phase of like, okay, he's not going to walk through the door any second now. And then also learning to sort of like relearning to live the dash again, because I found that, I had sort of that life when he was here and now the life is different afterwards. But how do I still live that dash is something for me that's been so important, because not just for myself personally, but for my family, my self-care, to just kind of show up that way. So when you're talking about in that book that you did that book, tell us again the title of the book, and then also tell us like what were some of the things that maybe came up for you in that writing of that book.
Yeah, the title of the book is Live Your Dash, Discovering the 8 F's to Freedom. I mean, there's so many different things that came up. And I think one of the things it did as far as who I am as a person now is it gave me the ability to reflect. I think writing helps people gather and organize their thoughts, feelings, ideas, and having that space to write it out is therapeutic. I didn't ever have the intention. I was like, hey, when I grow up, I'm going to be an author. Like, I never said that. Uh, I thought that was for nerds. Like, I thought that was for just people. I was like, I don't want to be like those weirdos. And, now I'm a weirdo. And I became the weird person that I didn't want to be, right? From the books. And now that's what I love to do. But I learned a lot about myself, too, that I think when you write a book, especially when it's, you're putting your heart and your soul into it, essentially you have to become a new person to deliver on what you shared with the world.
That's so true. We don't walk into thinking I'm gonna go be an author. I'm gonna go be a speaker, right? All that things evolve in our life that lead that on that path, and to find a way. I do a coaching for a nonprofit. I work with women. It's called the Mary Martha House, and I share with the women, like, we all have a story. Everybody has a story to share, and you could put in a book, whether you want to publish it or not. It doesn't matter, but you have a story. It's important to share your story. And what I share with them and I coach them on is like, leave a legacy behind. The lady who's going to come in the house after you leave the house, what would you say to her when she's first walking into the home, and what advice would you give her as she prepares to bounce forward to the next level of her life? Is just so important. And I love that you talked about that things come up, and we're going to go share that. And so tell us a little bit, like, that's led to what you're doing now. Like, you went out and started speaking on it during COVID. You did lots of Zooms and so forth, and then now you were approached about coaching other authors to become either authors and or speakers. So how did that evolve for you?
Well, it evolved because it actually evolved from my second book that came out. And I realized I was like, my first book came out, it was a great process, but I was like, I feel like I can do better. And therefore, I'm going to need to hire someone. I really, at that time, I had never invested in myself at all, like as far as like significant financial funds. And this time I was investing what felt like millions of dollars. It really wasn't, but it felt like it to me. Right. And so I was like, I'm going to pay this coach this amount of money. I'm like, this is insane. And I almost didn't do it because I was living in fear, right? And I think a lot of times people, they don't make that investment in themselves because there's this fear, of success, or this fear of failure, or a fear of having to change, and they don't want to do that. I was like, but I'm ready for this no matter what, and I believe that this person could help me. I made that investment in myself, and once I saw how much hiring a coach changed my life, I said, I want to be able to do this for other people. want to be able to help people share their story in a way that transforms their life and their business.
Yeah, I that whole fear, that fear can, can hold us back for so many different things. It doesn't, if we fall into, the false evidence of it appearing real, we don't get to see some of the things that if we just step out of the box a little bit that we're comfortable in. And so you went and you did that and got a coach. And I've been there. I remember my first time I got a coach, and like you're saying, I'm married to an accountant and a CPA. It's like, okay, I want to do this. He's like, oh, and then he's an auditor on top of it, Jesse. So it's like, okay, we're going to audit everything about it, So it's like, oh my gosh. And so that leap of faith, like taking that first leap of going, I'm worth it. I'm going to invest in myself, and it's so worthwhile. And so tell us what it's led to now. Now you're coming across country with a program. We're going to talk to you about in that in just a second. But tell us, like, what did it lead to as you started? I love that you said you saw what you received from your coach and you wanted to teach and coach others. So tell us what you're doing, what's the coaching that you're doing, and what are some of the things you see with the people that you're coaching when you help them through that fear of moving forward in their business of coaching and or being an author and speaker?
Yeah, I'm being able to witness people who know that they have a story, right? And people typically fall into two camps. One, they think that their story is not that interesting, or it's too much trauma and no one wants to hear about it. And both are incorrect. You have just the right amount of exact life experiences to make a difference and impact. It's like, what are you going to do with your story? Because only you can tell it. You're the only person in human history that has your specific story, which makes it very special, unique, and stands out. And what I've been able to see with people that I've coached is how their lives dramatically shift into a completely new direction of hope, healing, confidence, growth, connections, different levels of impact and income because they're stepping into their power rather than running away from parts of their life that may have caused some trouble. They're embracing it and then finding a way to leverage their pain for purpose and profit.
And it's so, and you're right. We are the only ones that can tell our stories. I love when I coach women, when I work with them, I talk to them about, we come into this world and, in our DNA, it's already been determined, the things that are going to happen to us. Like it's, no matter who you believe in, but I believe, God's like, okay, I've got this path, and it may not go the way he wants it or way we want it to go, but we're going to go down this path. And, I also believe that, I talk about talents, we have these talents, like you have this talent to coach other people to do speaking, sharing their stories and things like you're sharing with us today. And if we don't work on that for ourselves, and if we don't work on that, understanding that our story, as you said, is so unique to us, and find a way to share it, we're sort of cheating ourselves, but really we're cheating the other people that you can make an impact and change their lives in so many different ways. And so when we hold back and we just are fearful of stepping into sharing that story, we become trapped, and other people don't get to receive the benefit. And I love, one of the things that we're doing in honor of our son, Matt, is that he was born of our hearts. So we adopted Matthew when he was a month old. He was mixed race. He's the only mixed race child in our family because we are completely Caucasian, and also in his bio family. He was the only mixed race in his bio family as well. And the things that he struggled with, like his story about being bullied by his peers of his same race, being, looked at differently because his parents were white, just the different things. But then also the great things that happened because he was adopted, the type of life he had, the opportunities he had that maybe he might not have had if he was not placed with us. He wanted to share that story. He says, I want other people to know, Mom, that, if you're going to adopt a child of a different race than you are, or culture, make sure too that you empower them and surround them with people of their culture. Because one thing that stood out for him was when we go to church, he said to me one time, Mom, look around, what do you see? And I'm like looking around, like, I see people. He's like, but what kind of people do you see? And I'm like, I don't, just different kinds of people. And he's like, do you see anybody of my color in here? And I was like, oh, it was an eye opener for me, and then to understand that side of it for him. And he said, I want to share that story. So him and I were going to write the book together. And then, of course, we lost him in July of 22. So we're actually doing our own book as well. It's a compilation of 25. He was 25 when he passed. So we're looking for 25 authors that have adopted a different culture than themselves to share their stories and, the good, the bad, and the lessons they've learned as well. And so if he had not spoken that, and we had not listened and wanted to pay it forward, we wouldn't be able to empower. I'm already seeing the empowering happening and listening to the stories and connecting other families together as we do in the author meetings. It's really great to watch them share the story and the lessons we're learning. And so I love that what you're doing is you're teaching others to share their story, giving them that safe space to know that it's okay to share their stories, because sometimes our stories can be pretty traumatic as well. And so understanding how to share that story. So my other question for Jessie would be, is like, in some of the stories that we share, sometimes they are other people are impacted by the story we share. Like if we've had trauma, there might be some impacts of other people. How do you help the author and speaker share that story, without maybe calling out the other person, or if they have that concern? How do you help them walk through that part of it?
I would say every story that people have, there's typically a person in their family or a friend who may have potentially hurt them, right? And there could be some strain on that relationship by calling them out directly. I encourage people when they are speaking on stages or they are writing a book, you don't have to necessarily use their name. And so you can still address, this person did this, or this person hurt me when they said that. You don't have to say my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister. You don't have to name that a specific relationship. You could just identify there was a specific, there's a person. And that way you don't have to, when your family reads the book, all of a sudden they're going to disown you essentially from all the dirty secrets that you spilled, right? And so you could just quite literally just frame it as, a person in my life. You don't have to get specific. And I think that can be a more safe route to approach when sharing difficult things about your life.
I love that you share that. And I think that people need to hear that too. So if you're listening, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I really want to share my story, but you had that concern. There are ways, as Jessie shared, that you can still share your story without naming somebody or having that concern. And so I'm glad that you share that. So now, Jessie, you've taken this, you're coaching, you decide you want to, we've come out of COVID, and you decide that you don't want to just stay home. You want to see the world, and you want to take your story and share the world. So where did that idea come to start taking it to different cities in the US? And now you're doing it, I think you're doing your second international opportunity as well.
Yeah. So what really got me to, so we just did our last speakers competition in Niagara Falls, Canada, and we did a retreat in Italy last year. And so we're going to go back to Italy again this year in June, and then August we're going to Iceland for a retreat. And really, what brought that about was giving people to become international speakers, not just speaking their own country, because they provide a different level of credibility and also unique experiences. And not to mention, I'm a family of travelers. We love to see the world. It's like our favorite thing is to travel the world with some of the most inspiring people on the planet and make an impact at the same time. So we love going to beautiful places around the world to make a difference.
So how many people do you typically take? Let's talk about international for a second. How many people do you typically are going along with you to the different cities you're going, countries you're going to?
Yeah, typically we take about 15. That's about the max that we do. We want to keep the group very intimate. When people come to our events, they say it very much feels like family. And it's because we designed the event that way. And the relationships are very deep and strong, powerful. And that's what we like to do.
That's awesome. And so you have done how many here in the US now?
So this would be 3 speaker competitions once we get to this one this month in Tampa. And we've also done a retreat. So we've done 4 here in the United States after a few weeks, and then 2 internationally.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about Tampa. That's my hometown. Tell everybody what's happening here in Tampa, and what is the speaker competition about? Walk somebody who doesn't know this, never heard of this before. Explain to them what you're doing and how they can be involved.
Absolutely. In February 23rd to 24th, we quite literally have 1 speaker spot left. What we do at this event, this is what we created it for. There's 3 main problems that we got to solve. Problem number 1 is a lot of times people want more confidence, and you get confidence from taking action consistently in the direction of the goal. And if you want to be a better communicator, which I believe is a goal for any business owner, the better you can communicate your message, the more you can attract your ideal audience. It's getting on stage multiple times. What that does is it helps you get more clarity on your messaging. And because you're getting up there more times, you're developing the skill set much quicker in a shorter amount of time. Then from there, it's having the right connections in the room. So we bring some people in the speaking industry who are speaker champions and then also host their own events. They're going to provide you with written feedback and verbal feedback. You're going to know exactly what you did well. So by the time you leave your event, you will be better because all the feedback you're getting as well, on top of developing the skill. And plus, you should have some potential leads for future stages to speak on. Then from there, it's having the right media in the room for your credibility. So we bring in a media team to do your headshot photos, your action shot photos, and your video footage. And obviously, you're in the room with some incredible human beings. And, we do speaker coaching, we do speaker training. We have, people who are able to bring guests with them, also vendor tables, and then being able to a cash prize for the winner. So a lot of fun, a lot of learning and connecting.
And who doesn't love a cash prize, right? Cash prizes are always great fun, right? So how many
For
are you
sure.
expecting here in Tampa?
So as far as the speakers go, we limit it to 10 only. We do that because everyone gets significant stage time. And so we want to make sure that there's two reasons. One is that they're not speaking till midnight, right? So we want to honor everybody's time. And then from there, like, it's the intimacy of the group, right? So it's quite literally being intentional, and then we'll have obviously other guests in the room of our panel of judges, our media team. And then we'll have some probably other business partners and family members of some of the speakers out in the room as well. And then people from the Tampa area who want to come out. So we do have separate attendee tickets as well for people who just want to come and be in the room and do some networking.
I love it. And of course, you're in my hometown. So those that are listening here in Tampa, you will put all the links in the show notes and make sure you get all that information. But Jessie, just so while they're listening, we're talking about it, tell everybody how they can get information on it.
Yeah, the simplest way is to quite literally connect with me on Facebook, which is Jessie Cruz, or Instagram, Jessie Cruz Speaks. Those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me. And then we have a conversation and see if it makes sense to have you in the room with us. So, like I said, we got a speaker spot left and we have some attendee spots left too. And so definitely love to have some great locals in the room with us.
And also, I know that one of the things you and I talk about doing, we're going to interview some of these speakers that are going to be at the event. We're going to interview them and have them come on here and give them enough chance to share their story. But you said there's a cash prize. So tell everybody what the cash prize is all about.
Yeah, so the cash prize, before they leave the event, that winner is going to have $2,000 cash handed right to them. What that does is it gives them because as a speaker you want to get paid, and so at our event you get paid, right? You have opportunity to get income at the event, and so it's important for me that's our way to give to the speakers in a way that provides value to their future, and so they have tangible proof that they've been able to speak so well that someone is willing to pay them.
Absolutely, because you definitely want to be paid for your story. There are opportunities to share your story with a gracious of your time, but there's also many opportunities that you should be sharing your story. So let's talk about that, Jessie. Let's talk about, in fact, this afternoon, I was approached by somebody about doing an article, and they're like, it's $50 to do the article. And I now am at the point with my reputation and the speaking that I've been doing that I don't have to pay in our world, we call it pay to play, right? So I don't necessarily have to do an article unless I really want to be in that magazine. I might be called to do it. But talk about, that person who's listening to us that's wanting to get in the speaking world, and they're like, do I pay to play? What is do you have any like thoughts and rules around that when you coach your clients? How do you walk them through that?
I think there's a few different approaches, and I think all three need to be done. Sometimes it's, you speak for free. I think that's a thing that a person always needs to be doing. I think it's also paying to be on a stage. And I think there's also getting paid to be on a stage. And I think all three need to be done consistently because they all three have a variety of different dynamics to them that are extremely valuable. And so I tell speakers, do all three consistently.
Totally agree. I mean, absolutely doing all three consistently. Just make sure I don't, this is just my thought, and we can elaborate that make sure you're not just always paying to play, that you want to make some money out of your message as well. You want to earn some, as your speaking opportunity does, it lets them also have the opportunity to earn some, money back, the $2,000 as you were sharing. So it's important to also to know where you have that balance. What about ideas? I've heard this before, and I know I've done it, it worked well too, where somebody wants you to pay to speak, but maybe instead of paying to speak, you offer a freebie. Like I had 100 books, and I was like, I could give you 100 books for all your audience, and then there was some value in the messaging that they were doing. So there's other opportunities. Would you talk about that? Like you can maybe not necessarily pay, but maybe you offer something in exchange.
Yeah, I mean it's simple as providing strategic value, bartering services that make sense where everybody wins. Anytime that you are doing something like that, just make sure that you have a unique service or product or experience that you can offer to the audience in exchange for what can meet the needs of the people hosting that event. So, I think it's just a great way for everybody to win.
I totally agree with you. Okay, so tell us about you when you talk about traveling now, you have your wife, and then how many kids do you guys have?
Yeah, so our daughters Haley and Mariah actually help us with the events too. So they get paid to travel the world with us, and they help us do strategic things behind the scenes to make the event very memorable for the people in the room.
That's awesome. So what is it like? So those that are listening, what is it like to travel like you're doing with how old are your girls, and how do you manage that? Because some people are going, "Oh my God, if I was traveling for my business and my kids, that might sound overwhelming to them."
I mean, so they're not like young kids. So I mean, maybe it's a little easier for me because they're 17 and 15. So we started traveling with them probably a couple years ago. Well, we've been traveling with them their whole life. So let me take that back. So my kids have been traveling since they were like 5 and 3. We've been traveling. It wasn't for business back then because we weren't in business back then. But we've been traveling with them forever. I mean, it feels like forever, right? So for us, they've been traveling most of their life. They've been multiple countries. Now it's just different because they're older, and now it's for business. And so traveling is something they're used to and accustomed to. It's something they look forward to. And now they have this understanding is that we don't have to always choose between business and family. Yes, you must have time away from your family to build the business. And yes, there's times you need to spend time with your family away from your business. But if you can do both at times, I encourage everyone to do that. That's why we host our events in some of the most beautiful places in the world. My kids can't wait to go. Yes, there's some work that they need to do that they're probably not even always happy about doing, but they know that the trade off, the memories and experiences of their family, it's always worth it.
That's so true. That's so true. And you're right. Your kids are older, but I know I have a friend of mine. She actually had a dog grooming business. Her name is Jen Bethune, and she closed down her entire business. They sold everything. They put I think it's 5 kids, 4 dogs, in a Bluebird bus, and they've been traveling around the world and living like a nomad life. And it's fun. It's fun to watch it, and fun to watch the kids evolve through all of that. So I love that you're doing that. So let's stop. We're gonna do a little shift here in the show for a second, and we're going to talk about self-care, which is one of the things we talk about a lot here on the show. And so traveling like that, you've got a family, and you're going to different cities and different countries. Where do you find balance, Jessie, for balancing self-care, making sure you're doing things for yourself? What's some of your routine like that when you're on the road for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still staying consistent with things that I do, so I still exercise, I read, I write, I pray, go for walks. Those are things that are very important to me. So I still keep most of those routines even when I'm on the road to the best of my ability.
And then let's talk about, you're traveling with your kids. So I know you've got a beautiful wife that's right there as your partner as well. And I know she's an author too. So tell us, like, how is that? How does that evolve? And how do there's so many stresses that can come up in a marriage and things like that. So you're traveling, you're away from home. How do you guys find time to spend time with each other on the road, and then also balance? Because you guys are doing you're balancing your business together. So how does that mix together for you guys?
Well, in the beginning, it didn't. in the beginning, it was it was rough. It was actually putting up a divide between my wife and I in the beginning. And, I think as, when you're with someone and you're committed, you want to understand them. You want to understand their world. And my wife made a decision. She saw that me and her were drifting apart. She goes, well, I'm going to have to step into Jesse's world and learn what he's doing and really be a part of it. And it was one of the best decisions for our marriage because now we're so much closer. We understand the struggles. We understand each other's challenges. We also understand each other's victories at a greater and deeper level because we're doing this together. For the couples out there, it's having alignment, with your vision, your mission, and your values, and then doing your best to live that out daily. And then also making time for date night. So we have a scheduled date night. Like even our schedule is crazy, but like even in our crazy schedule, like we are committed to a weekly date night and we make the relationship a priority no matter what.
And I think it's awesome what you alluded to, like you're aligning your visions, finding out what you both want. Because, as couples, there's things we want together, but there's also things as individuals we also want to achieve. And then finding how to mix those two together and giving each other the space to have those individual goals and visions as well I've been with my husband almost 40 years. I think that's been a big part of our success is that we know each other, we each have our own goals, but then we also bring things together and how can we support one another in that? And I love you talk about date night. I actually just finished an email that's going to go out next week. And we're talking about, how do you have confidence to do things for yourself? And how to communicate that realistic expectations to your loved ones? Because sometimes, in the world of self-care, saying no to somebody, people think we're selfish or we just don't care, right? And so communication is a big, big key for that in our marriage, and what I coach on as well is to how are you communicating your realistic expectations with one another. And so I'm thank you for being honest about how it was at the start, and then how your wife's like, if I want to be part of this, I need to step into, as you called it, Jesse's world, right? We have to step into our spouse's world to see, what are they, what's that like for them on a daily basis? I know my husband, he worked for the VA, he worked out of the office, so he retired a couple of years ago. So he'd go to the office. I didn't understand the stress he had. I'm like, oh, you have a day job, you're going to the office job. No, there's a lot of stuff that went on with the office job because he dealt with a lot of government stuff, right? So understanding that different stress when he come home. And so one of the things that we created in our marriage is like we said, because sometimes there's things in our mind, but maybe the other person is just not in that mindset to hear what's happening or the concern or anything. So we created saying like, are you open to receiving right now? I have something on my mind. And then we've created the space that says, if the answer is no, it's okay to say, right now it's not a great time for me to receive anything, with the commitment that within 24 hours, we make our space available for the other one to share whatever's on our mind. And I think for us it's made a great difference in the success of our marriage together. I met Chuck when I was just barely 19, and and we got married shortly, a couple of years after that. But that was a lesson I never saw in my household growing up. I didn't see that communication. And I think really communication is that really, as I said, communicating realistic expectations are so, so important. How is communication with running a business, and then you've got kids you're going to do, like, how does it work for you guys? What's your approach towards the communication with all of that?
Like I said, I think it comes down to consistency and quality time because it's hard to have really consistent communication with someone that you're married to if you're not making time for them. So then everything always feels like rushed. And so, like, my wife has to put me in check sometimes because I love to talk business. Like, it's my favorite thing to talk about. And my wife will just let me know, Jesse, I don't need you to be the business man, Jesse. I need you to be my husband right now. Let's take a break from talking about business. Like, all right, I'll stop. Okay. So it's just having a boundary of like, and that reminder, hey, we've been talking about business for 4 hours. Let's talk about something else. And so it's just having that understanding that, there's times to talk about business, but there's also times to just not. And that's okay too.
That's so cool. I love how she says, okay, I don't need the Jessie business right now. I need Jessie right now. So I love that she does that with you. How about with your girls? How is that with the girls? Like, wait, let me ask you this too. How is that with the girls? And then also, what are you seeing them like, that you said they're 16 and 17, I think you said. What are you seeing them as they're approaching that next stage of like maybe looking at college, their careers? What are you seeing happening from them following along with you guys on this endeavor that you're doing around the world?
Yeah, I think that they're completely inspired. Actually, so in the beginning, now they're just used to it. That's what they said. It was so funny. So, like in the beginning, like they were blown away. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like this is like our life. Like we're going to, some really nice hotels and some beautiful destinations, and you guys are getting paid for this. This is really weird. Like we've been doing it. We've been paying to do it since they were little. Now we're getting paid to do it. So it's like a whole completely different life. I think they appreciate how much it's allowed us to travel as a family because it like we were already traveling before, but now it's at a completely different level. And so I think they're starting to appreciate that. This is something we used to talk about, my wife and I, in front of them. And now it's not just words; it's actually happening. And I think it lets them know about speaking into existence what you want your life to look like and then putting in the work to make it happen. So it's showing them that you can quite literally speak your future into existence.
I love that. That is so true because you're setting that example to your kids, and that if you want it, you can speak it and it can happen. You just have to focus on it, speak it, and it comes about. And I just love, what about career wise? What do you see them like? Do you see anything they're leaning towards, like speaking, author? I mean, with what you're bringing to their world, what do you see them leaning towards?
So as far as the author thing, it's so funny. So back in 2021, I asked them, I think it was the end of 2021, if they wanted to write a book with me. And so they're obviously a little younger back then. And they both said yes. So we actually got a children's book published. It came out in 2022. And so my daughters actually both published authors. So that was really more of just like a really bonding bucket list thing for me that I wanted to do with them. That was very special. And so thankful for that. I don't think they're going to be authors though. I don't think they're going to be speakers, and that's perfectly fine with me. I just want them to do what you know they feel like they're been uniquely gifted with, because they both have a unique gift. And my daughter Haley, she's a little bit older, right? So she talks about interior design and real estate and traveling the world. So that's her thing. And my youngest daughter, she's talked about doing sound ultra. What is it called? Ultrasound. I said it backwards. Ultrasound tech. And so she's mentioned that before. But they've changed their minds by about 40 million times. So if you ask me again tomorrow, Pearl, I'd give you a completely different answer.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk a second, because as you're saying what they're looking at for career wise, people are listening and they're going, in their minds, and I know the answer because I have many people that do it as well. But in their minds, they're saying, well, they've done all this traveling with dad, but now they're going to possibly go do careers they can't travel. That's not true, right, Jesse? You can pretty much travel with any career if you really want to make it work. There's ways to make it work, right? Like I know I've got a friend, there's traveling nursing, there's different, I have a friend who does interior, her daughter does interior design, and she goes to Italy and does things all over the world. So to the listeners listening saying, I would love to take what I do and travel with it. What are some of the steps, like what some of the steps you went through to say, how can we make this work, make money off it, and also still have fun traveling?
Yeah. I mean, it's really having a plan and then committing to the plan, but then also understanding to adjust when the plan doesn't work, right? So I have a million and one ideas, and guess what? They're not always going to work, right? Sometimes they're going to flop, they're going to fail, and that's going to be okay. Our kids have seen things at our events like in the past, like, hey, you know what? That probably didn't go as planned. Let's make better plans for next time, and showing them how to constantly adjust and, more importantly, really build right relationships with people. And I think that'll take my children. I talk to them all the time, like, yeah, get good grades. That's fine. That's really cool. However, more importantly, uh, be an incredible human being that makes a difference with your gift and build meaningful, lifelong relationships. And you do those things right there, you can pretty much accomplish anything your heart desires.
That is such great advice. And anybody's listening, that's great advice, not only for kids, but for ourselves, right? Like you said, things aren't always going to go as planned, but there's a lesson to learn from the plan too. If we don't plan, then, we're not going to be able to have the opportunity to learn the lesson. And then the plans, what's the same? I'm trying to think of the same. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So if you don't do that, things aren't going to come the way you want. I love, you remind me of the analogy I share all the time. It's like, you have this goal and you're going to go up the mountain and, people, you're going to go for a hike. What do you need when you go for the hike? Like plan it out. Like, what do I need to do if I want to go take what I'm doing and do like Jessie does and go travel the world and make an income on it? What's some of the things you need in that plan? Because you're going to go for this hike up this mountain. And, as you're hiking up that mountain towards what that plan can look like, and some things may not be working. So you stop at the scenic route and you say, okay, this is working, this isn't working, and you leave the stuff in the litter box at the trash can at the side of the road, and then you carry on. And maybe you grab a mentor, like if you're a speaker and you want to do what better, more speaking and opportunities, you get in touch with Jessie and you have a mentor like Jessie to help you move along. Or maybe it's something where in your self-care you just don't, you're such a people pleaser, you don't know how to say no, so you can't get your plan going. That's where I can come in and help you and coach you through how to step into the sentence of the word no. And so there's that thing. And then when you get to the top, it's like you've gotten to the top of this mountain, but there's other things you still want to do. It doesn't mean you have to come down the mountain flying. You can walk down the mountain and take the same approach of what's working, what doesn't working, and have that plan laid out so that, you have something, a roadmap to go by to help you to do that. And, I have a friend, I'm going to be interviewing her soon. She is a wellness coach, and she's always wanted to go to Italy. And you were at Italy. I think you guys might have been near each other at the same time recently. And she loves Italy and she wants to do a retreat. So she decided, I'm doing my retreats in Italy. And I'm like, how cool is that? She's like, I'm going to go to Italy and do my retreats. I'm like, that's awesome. I mean, I do a retreat every year. Every year, September, we have a pajama retreat. It's a retreat for 24 women. We get together and it's about self-care, self-development. We do a lot of them are business people. So we do things around health and wellness and business as well. And it's a pajama. So we're in our PJs the whole weekend. But our 10-year goal is to go to Costa Rica. So I'm like, we're going to go to Costa Rica with it. But now I'm like, after talking to you and her, I'm like, maybe I need to up my ante and go to Italy because I'm Italian. So why not? Right.
Hey, listen, Pearl, you are definitely invited to join us
I'm
in Italy.
Yeah, I'm ready to look at. I got to look at the dates just because I got weddings this year, and then I'm on the board of Michelle Dewsbury, so we're talking about going to Africa. So there's a lot happening. So I got a plan, right? I need to set my plan out on what it's going to be. So Jessie, I look at the time. We're almost at the end of our show. I want to ask you this. So we're talking about your kids and traveling and all of that. So when somebody comes to your speaker camp and they've that next step, I've been to some before, but the after step, what are some of the after steps that you provide those attendees that walk through the speaker camp, and even the person who wins the cash prize? What are some of their next steps after they're done with the competition?
It's definitely coaching. And so we provide some of the coaching leading up to the event, but that's going to prepare you for the event. And the coaching, the more longer term coaching, is going to prepare you for decades. And we walk you through the framework of, how I coach our students and building your own stage, because a lot of times these speakers they're in such heavy pursuit of, I want to get this paid gig, and that's fine. But a lot of times when you do that, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, or you can create your own stage rather than waiting 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years trying to get one paid gig, because it can be exhausting. You can create your own stage and book yourself on your own stage and start doing things your way and not have to wait.
All right, you guys heard it. You create your own stage. It's so empowering when you do that. That's one of the. I mean, my retreat this year is my 8th retreat. I've created my own stage in my retreat, and it's so much. It's amazing, and I'm sure with you too, to watch your speakers and authors come through and watch their growth. It's so fun to watch the growth. I have many women that come year after year to the retreat, and watching their growth has been so empowering to continue doing what I'm doing. And I love it. So I'm gonna ask you. We're gonna go back to self-care for a question here. So Jessie, I like to ask this question. I'm gonna ask you because sometimes it can be hard to do while you're traveling. But tell us 3 things that bring you joy and why they bring you joy.
3 things that bring me joy. The very first thing is my wife and kids. So I'll put them in number as one. Um, they bring me joy because they're the most important people that I've been gifted. And every day it's finding moments to appreciate them. That gives me joy. My joy also comes from God, knowing that He loved me enough to create me and still love me, even when I felt I was unlovable. That gives me the greatest of joy. And another thing gives me joy is being able to pour into entrepreneurs to help them find their voice through speaking and then watching them build a life that they desire through speaking.
I love that. I love how we talk about our family and our faith, and I love that you put those two in the forefront. Oftentimes when I ask that question, people struggle. That's part of my starting off coaching with the clients I coach with is I ask them to give me 10 things to bring them joy. And I'm like, and why? I make them really think about, why does it bring you joy? And it's really amazing to see the things that are written down, that are spoken and shared, and then to help them dig deeper. Like on the surface, they think, oh, because my kids bring me joy because I birthed them and all those kinds of things, or I adopted them or whatever. But then when I start delving down with them, like, okay, but some of us all have kids, but why? Sometimes our kids aren't the best thing ever. Like, why? And when they do that, it's like, it's just peeling the onion off of them. And then they start really feeling the joy. Right. So one of the other parts of that is to enjoy our faith, our family, and the things you're doing with the entrepreneurs. There's things that we have to not do. And, we make all these to-do lists. I got to, plan my event. I got to go make sure the speakers have their training. I have to, go to the grocery store. I have to take the kids here and there. But there's certain things we have to do so that so that we can really enjoy the things that bring us joy. And, like for me, some of it's used to be the stop saying yes to everybody else, right? I had to start saying yes to myself. So what are some of the things for you, Jessie? Give us 3 things for you that you have on your not to-do list.
On my not to do list, I like that. 3 things. Number one is that I do not want to hang out with negative people. I've spent most of my life doing that. It is exhausting. And so it's just something on my not to do list. Number 2 is spending my time complaining. And that's one that I still struggle with. But I know when I get into that rhythm of doing it, it's something I'm telling myself I'm not going to do anymore. So that can be draining my own energy as well, is to complain and find things that are wrong and get myself worked up. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is deciding that even if they're family or friends, that does not mean they get the ultimate right to have access to your life completely. Because just because they've been friends for 10, 20 years or however long, and that's your family, that does not equal healthy people to be around because friendships change and evolve over time. And so I'm learning to be more loyal to my future than my past.
Those are 3 really powerful ones, and the 3rd one really resonates with me. And, gonna go back to number 1 first. We are who we hang out with oftentimes, and it's I remember when I used to just do health coaching with a weight loss program, and I would say to them, like, my clients would, like, they would, have deviations, they weren't losing. I'm like, "Okay, what are you doing?" And all the times it went back to social activities that they're doing around food. And I'm like, you have to have a plan when you're going to go to these activities. Let's create a plan, right?" And so it's so true who we hang out with, and then the not complaining. That's sometimes that can be hard for us, right? Sometimes that can be hard. But the number 3 really resonates with me a lot because I've had like with my son, I had a father who I was the epitome of a daddy's girl. As big as your smile was about you talking with your girls, that was my dad's smile for me. And when I found out my dad had become very racist towards my son, I was like, that's just not acceptable. And he wasn't stopping. So I literally wrote an obituary to him being my father and that he was no longer allowed, the privilege of being called dad was no longer allowed. I wrote it so good that when I sent it to my siblings and said, I don't need to know when he's no longer here, because as far as I'm concerned, that part of my life is done. They actually thought my father had passed away. That's how well I was. I sat for like 2 hours asking God, like, walk me through, how do I do this? And that's what I felt like he put on my heart. But then recently I had some challenges. I grew up not great examples of parents, and it wasn't necessarily their fault. Some actions, yes, were theirs, but they didn't have great examples either. And so for me to have those boundaries around my parents, I've had people say, well, why would you put boundaries around certain family members, friends, or your parents? And I look at them, Jessie, and I say, so if I was with somebody in my life, like a significant other, let's say my husband was doing these same kind of behaviors, would you want me to stay with this person? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, so how's it different? It's not any different. It's the boundaries we set up of what we are going to accept, the behaviors around our life and how they can affect our life, our plans, and what we want for ourselves. So I'm glad you shared that, because I think more people need to hear that it's okay to put boundaries around difficult family situations, and then also around friends as well, especially like you said, some that have been with us for 20 years. I mean, I'm 59 years old. My parents have been with me for almost 60 years, so it can be very hard. But we have to do that for our mental fitness. We have to do that for our self-care. And it's just, and also for us to grow, I feel as well. What are your thoughts there, Jessie?
Yeah, I think it starts with loving yourself enough to put a distance between the people who don't choose to love you properly.
I love that. Well, okay. I want you to tell everybody how they can reach you, Jessie. We're getting near the end of the show here. Let everybody know how that they can reach you. We'll put everything in the show notes as well. And it's all yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Facebook, Jessie Cruz, Instagram, Jessie Cruz Speaks. It's a great way to connect if you want to be a part of one of our events, whether it's the one in Tampa, Florida, or coming up in Italy in June. Definitely let me know.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I already told Jessie before the show that we're going to do our cards. This is a little something we do every time we have a guest on the show, Jessie. So we're going to shuffle the cards. Jessie's going to tell me when to stop, and then we're going to read the card and see what he has to say about his card. So tell me when to stop, Jessie.
Stop.
All right, so your card says, what and who is influencing me? What and who is influencing you?
My wife, I don't want to let her down. I'll do this for her. I mean, my kids too. But, you know, when we started this business, she was in a tough position. She was a school teacher. She didn't want to leave, but she had to leave because the environment became so toxic. But she's like, Jessie, I have to leave. And I said, absolutely. And she was stressed and concerned about financial, how that might affect us. And I said, don't worry, we'll do fine. And so she was able to leave her teaching job because the business was working. And so it's like, when I'm doing this, like, I'm doing this for her sake too, like her mental health, her peace, her joy, because in a toxic work environment, I can take that from you. And so I want to make sure that I'm making her proud. That's why I'm going so hard. I just want to make sure that I give her a life that she wants and deserves.
I have to believe that you're already doing that. I'm sure she was sitting here with us. She would tell you you're doing it, and I'm so excited for you guys. I'm excited for seeing you guys here in a couple weeks here in Tampa, Florida. And I'm excited to come over and interview your speakers as well, and give them the opportunity to share their story here too. Like we said, find platforms that they can get their story out as well. So I'm really excited to do that with you and see you in a couple weeks. We've never, and again, another person. I say all the time, I meet so many people on social media, and we never met in person before. So I'm excited to finally meet you in person and welcome you to my home state of Florida. And so I just wanted to thank you again for coming on the show. And to all of our listeners that are listening today, I want to remind you to like and follow us on, you can do it on the YouTube channel and also on Spotify and Apple and all that great stuff, as well as 360 Talk Radio for Women. And remember, you come into this world, you are a little rough on the outside. You've got some work to do. You got to plan it all out. But as you do, you find your pearl, and you will find your inner pearl of greatness. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you alone, stuck in a storm.